3, the last unit I will be discussing today, we'll be looking at the aims, construction, and application of different assessment tools. So this unit focuses on the tools used in assessment, again, the levels and domains of Bloom's taxonomy, as well as others, which includes Marzano and Kendall. Comparisons can be made between the different taxonomies of learning. We look at objective questions, semi-objective questions, and free response or interpretive questions. And with that, we look at each of these have aims, construction, advantages, and disadvantages. So this is a mouthful. However, you can deduce it so that it doesn't become overwhelming for you. All right. Okay. This is the contents of Unit 3. So it goes up to 3.5. I have shortened it, 3.3 to 3.5. I have thrown together because it discusses the aims, construction, advantages, and disadvantages of all the types of questions that one get. All right, so I'm going to move on to 3.1, where we look at assessment tools that is appropriate to assess levels or objectives of the 3 learning domains. This is the learning domains that we discussed in Unit 1. The 3 learning domains, if you remember, was the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. When we look at the level, once again, we discussed this also in Unit 2. Level 1 is knowledge, 2, understand, 3, apply, 4, analyze, 5, evaluate, and 6, create. So what type of tasks can we give a learner when we look at these levels of thinking? For knowledge, one can ask a question, what is happening when a wheel turns? Okay, so a learner has to have some knowledge about something. Assessment tool appropriate for that is to make a list of, again, we refer back to the verbs used, which is in Unit 1. You're welcome to refer back to those units. They all link into each other. To understand is to classify types of stones or types of cars. One of the ways that you can do it is to use the tool of drawing or painting pictures of different cars. Applying means that how you can use something. In other words, we come to the practical part here. Can you apply your knowledge and understanding of a certain discipline? One of the examples of an assessment tool mentioned is to construct a model. Okay, so in other words, how can you construct a model of a car? Maybe you can have the learners make a car out of a cardboard box, or maybe from wire. They first need to have the knowledge of what exactly the car is, to understand the different types of cars that can be made and how they can use their understanding and knowledge to construct a model. Okay. Move on to analyze. The possible tasks is to classify, design a questionnaire. That is a task that one can give the learners, is to design their own questionnaire. To evaluate, here we have to use some judgment. So do you agree with this or with that? And therefore, you can use the assessment tool where you prepare a list of criteria and have the learners decide if they agree with statements or disagree with statements. The last and highest level of thinking in this domain is to create. In other words, they are making changes to solve something. An assessment tool can be to invent a type of machine. Or for our last example, maybe you can design a different type of car that does not exist yet. So this is the highest level of thinking, where it comes to invention and creative thinking. Okay, moving on to the second domain, the affective domain. As we remember, the affect domain has to do with a learner's feelings and emotions. It has to do with their attitudes, their beliefs, and how they see the world, which also has an effect on their behavior. So the 5 levels here is receive, respond, value, organize, and internalize. Okay. So to receive, it means that the learner has to listen to the teacher or their peer. Sorry for that typo. Should be listen to the teacher or their peers. In other words, an assessment tool can be used as learners attend a session. Respond. A possible task there is to participate actively, as the level of thinking refers. Respond, so you participate. You are actively involved. Assessment tool can include question the relevance of anything that you are discussing at the moment. Value. Decide the worth and relevance of something. An assessment tool is argue your point of view. So here one will probably find many different points of views because people have different values. They have different morals, they have different beliefs. So the affect domain can be a very interesting domain to learn more about your learners, to learn more about yourself, and especially for peer assessment and education. The 4th level is to organize. In other words, here you will qualify and quantify personal views. Here a learner or assessment tool can include something like develop your own idea of HIV and AIDS. What does it mean to you? Internalize. Possible tasks would be self-reliant. So a teacher might ask questions like, give suggestions on how to solve a problem. You will see the last one, or the highest levels of thinking, always has to do with some creative, original idea that a learner has to come up with. Okay. That's the affective domain. The last domain is the psychomotor domain, which has to do with the manual work or physical activity that a learner has to do, like producing a product, making something. It's also the process, but also the product. So there are 3 levels. It's perception, set, and guided response. Sorry, there are more levels. Probably continue, yes, on the next one. So I'm just going to go back. We have perception, set, guided response, mechanism, complex overt response, adaptation, and origination. Okay. When we look at the psychomotor domain, first level is perception. Now, perception has to do with how aware are we of things going on around us. What do we perceive? So it's awareness, ability to use sensory cues. And an assessment tool for the teacher can be to detect non-verbal cues in his or her learners. Set means the readiness, a learner's readiness to act. Okay, so to assess that, you look at what a learner knows and act upon a sequence of steps. So you are observing the learner and see how much they know and how they act as they do certain sequence of steps. Guided response. Possible tasks there is to attempt, and the assessment tool that one can use there is to follow instructions to build a model. In other words, you are guiding the learner here, telling them or showing them how to build a model. So you will also be observing how they follow your guidance and assessing them accordingly. Right. Mechanism is the basic proficiency to perform a complex motor skill. Okay, so we are moving into the higher levels of thinking now. Assessment tools can be use a certain tool to perform or to make something, to complete a task. Okay. Complex and overt response is expert proficiency, the intermediate stage of learning. to execute a complex process. The last two I'm going to skip on. Our time is very limited at the moment. So I'm just going to mention adaptation and origination. Please go and read through these things in your study guide and make sure you understand what they mean. All right. 3.2, we look at the comparison between cognitive taxonomies of Bloom and Marzano and Kendall. They restructured Bloom's taxonomy. They describe six levels of processing knowledge. These are information, the domains. The levels of processing is the self system and the metacognitive system. Under mental procedures, they have knowledge utilization, which falls in the cognitive, analysis, which also falls in the cognitive. The psychomotor procedures is comprehension and retrieval, and both of them also falls in the cognitive domains. So each level of processing can operate within each other of the three domains, within each of the other three domains. So they can jump around. Important here, lots of information. Read up on the aims, construction, advantages and disadvantages of objective, semi-objective and free response questions, which we will look at shortly. Okay, types of objective questions. That's the one in the column with the red, very bright red. These are objective questions. They're true and false, matching items, multiple choice items. All right. So the aims of true and false, you can go and read up on. Construct, it's statements that are definitely true or definitely false. Advantages of true and false is lots of content and can be covered in short time. Disadvantages is the difficult to write the questions beyond the knowledge level that are free from uncertainty. All right. You can go and read up on the matching items and the multiple choice items. I'm going to move on to semi-objective questions. Semi-objective questions include completion questions, short answer questions, and structured questions. All right. I'm just going to mention some of the disadvantages of completion questions. If there's more than one option, marking becomes difficult for the teacher. One of the advantages of completion questions is that they are easy to administer. All right. Lastly, we have the free response questions. They are structured essays, unstructured essays, and discussion, comparison, and evaluation. So these are the long questions. Advantages of structured essays is the ability to assess all levels of learning objectives. And the disadvantage is that it can be very time-consuming to answer and also to mark. All right, that brings us to the end of Unit 3. Please read through your study guide to make sure that you cover all of the information there. Thank you.